It's Western Edge Living, presented by CHI St. Alexius Health Dickinson. I'm host Bill Polinick, and along with Leanne Styszowski, we search the Western Edge for interesting stories from interesting people about interesting things. And we will tell you about today's program in just a moment. First, I wanted to let you know that if you have questions concerning mental health issues, whether it's grief counseling or suicide prevention, they have seminars on an ongoing basis at CHI St. Alexius Health Dickinson. When's the next one? Watch their Facebook page and they will let you know. Behind me, the Armstrong building on Elks Drive in Dickinson. You might have driven past it, but did you know what went on inside that building? Some of the biggest decisions in the oil field in North Dakota, farm and ranch decisions. Many legal matters were handled and are continuing to be handled in that building. Having an office in there for many years, a young man who's a graduate of Dickinson High, class of 1995, went on to study in Grand Forks, met his wife, who is from Norway, got married in Oslo, Norway, and transitioned into another office. Kelly Armstrong is the 34th governor of the great state of North Dakota. And today we're going to give you a snapshot of what it takes to get from the office behind me to an office in this building behind me, our beloved North Dakota State Capitol. It's quite a story, and we can't wait to share it with you today as we introduce you to the 34th governor of the great state of North Dakota, Kelly Armstrong, here on Western Edge Living, presented by CHI St. Alexius Health Dickinson. Our program is rolling.
CHI St. Alexius Health Dickinson presents Western Edge Living.
Western Edge Living.
Thank you for putting the remote aside and deciding to spend a little time with us here on Western Edge Living. We're a presentation of CHI St. Alexius Health Dickinson. And you know, it helps to, when you're doing things like these, to take a 10,000-foot view of what you're doing. And when I did that today, I realized that you as a viewer have an opportunity to meet these guests, interesting people with interesting stories. And one is quite interesting today as we meet and we welcome the 34th governor of the great state of North Dakota, Kelly Armstrong. Hello, Kelly.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it was a no-brainer. We've been working on this for a while, so thanks for being here today. You know, one of the questions that I was going to ask, hadn't hit you yet, that you're the governor of North Dakota, but I'm thinking you're inaugurated and you hit the ground running. You better be prepared to be the governor.
Well, absolutely, especially because, I mean, we set it up, right? You get sworn in the middle of December, and then the legislature meets starting early January for 80 days every 2 years. So it's designed for a new governor to come in and have to hit the ground running. So
Things are going well?
Things are going well. It's been a lot of fun. You know, after spending 6 years in D.C., I'm really glad to be back in North Dakota.
What's the pace like between D.C. and Bismarck?
So the pace is different. I always tell people, if you just want to be a member of Congress, it's a pretty easy gig. If you want to be an effective member of Congress, it's a grind, right? I had my wife and my 2 kids. You fly back and forth. When you get to D.C., you start at 7 in the morning and you don't quit until 10:30, 11 every night. That pace is different, but the decisions you make on a daily basis in the governor's office are significantly more consequential.
Grew up in the Dickinson area. I believe you graduated from Dickinson High in 1995?
Correct.
Always a midget?
Yeah.
Not midget? Okay.
Actually, before I moved to Bismarck, I lived about a block and a half from where we're filming right now.
Oh, wow. And then went to college, I think Grand Forks, right?
Yep.
You met a young lady of Norwegian descent? Talk about that, your beautiful bride.
So I didn't meet her in undergrad. I met her in my second year of law school. She was a one-semester exchange student from the University of University of Norway in Oslo, and that's when I probably figured out I was going to be pretty good at politics. In one semester, I convinced her to keep dating me, then eventually marrying me. I got married in an 800-year-old church in Oslo, Norway.
Really?
And then convinced her to move halfway across the world and spend the rest of her life with me.
So the decision to get into politics, that was kind of methodical, right? I mean, it was gradual. You didn't wake up one morning and say, honey, I think I'm going to run for this office. How did that come to be?
So I was in student government at Dickinson High. I was in student government a little bit in Grand Forks, but then I did, I think, what most people do. I started practicing law with a guy who's originally from Dickinson, Alex Reichert. His dad, Ron Reichert, was a lawyer out here forever. When my wife went to law school in Norway, she graduated from law school again at UND, and when she got done, I moved back to Dickinson. Judge Haroff, who's a judge now, Ron Reichert had retired. Judge Haroff had become a judge, so I opened a law practice in my dad's building and started practicing law. I kind of got involved in politics, I think, the same way a lot of people do. I kind of got upset about one issue. And I had testified in front of the state senate, and I wanted a bill to go the particular way. It went the opposite way. Called a friend of mine and said, I think I got to run for the legislature. George Nodlin, longtime public servant in western North Dakota, had decided he wasn't running for the state senate. So I ran for the state senate in District 36. And in 2012, 2018 ran for Congress, and 2024 ran for governor. So I never really intended to do it, but when we decide to do something, we kind of go 100 miles an hour.
Have you ever lost an election?
I did. I lost for student body president at the University of North Dakota. I lost one election in my life to a very good friend of mine named Chris Semrau, who is now in Oklahoma City, and we still keep in contact.
Is his dad Marv Semrau from Minot?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he's from Minot. I don't know if Marv's his dad.
Did he run like the civic centers? I think he was in.
He ran the Ralph Engelstead Arena,
Yeah.
and now he runs I can't remember the name, but it's where the Oklahoma City Thunder play, and they're building a new one. He's been really, really successful, and he's just a really great guy.
Spent time in Sioux Falls, I believe. And so he's still a good friend.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Let's back up now to when you were working in at the Armstrong building with your father. I think you and he both kind of shaped the oil field exploration in this part of the country in the late 70s, 80s, before your time, and then the Bakken.
Yeah, him significantly more so than me, but he's been in the oil and gas industry. I always tell people I've been in the industry since before I was born. So my dad got his realtor's license. I don't think he ever sold a house, but he worked for a guy named Bill Everett. Okay. And while he was doing that, he flipped a couple oil leases and never looked back. So, started in the mid-'70s, went through all of the good parts of the oil business in western North Dakota in the late 70s, early 80s, went through all the bad parts of the oil business from the mid-'80s till, the late 90s, and then he started drilling lodgepole wells and had some success doing that. And, then the Bakken came around in the non-op position. And I always said whatever the opposite of big oil was the Armstrong Corporation. We had 7 full-time employees, and until I ran for Congress, 3 of them had the last name Armstrong. So it was always fun to be a part of that, and it was great, especially when I got sick of men and women in black robes controlling my calendar, and I kind of got out of the trial law phase and started doing a bunch of work for my dad. And he's still one of my best friends in the whole world. We talked it earlier today, and got to stop up at the office and say hi to everybody, and it's just a huge part of who I am.
Your dad's still involved in everyday activities at the Armstrong building? Yeah,
my dad, he spends more time at the ranch, more time at the lake. They're in Florida right now, but he'll never be 100% retired. No. He just doesn't have it in him. Yeah.
Did you work with Harold Hamm?
I did. So if you go to the second hole of the Dickinson Golf Course,
okay,
that well is the Lorraine Angle. In the middle of this Bakken exploration, my dad and Harold and a guy named Tom Jordan drilled that oil well. It was one of the most significant lodgepole discoveries in the lower 48 state in the last 50 years, and it happened right in the middle of, while everybody else was drilling into the tight shale spaces, we were drilling a lodgepole well right on the second hole of the Dickinson Golf Course.
In your opinion, have we reached the full potential of the Bakken yet?
No, I don't think so, because we're leaving 85% of the oil in the ground. For as successful as all of this has been, we know that in these tight shale formations. So how we figure out enhanced oil recovery, how we can attract these companies to spend their capital here and try and crack that. You know, if we can get another 15% of that oil out of those formations, that's like a whole nother oil boom without all of the infrastructure challenges of the oil boom, because it already exists.
What was your role when it was getting hot and heavy in the Bakken, when people were living underneath trailer houses and there was bumper-to-bumper traffic on 85 and there's still a lot of traffic? What was your role then?
So I kind of lived it all, right? I was a practicing criminal defense attorney in the heart of the oil boom, and I was doing public defense. I was doing work in Dickinson. I was doing work in Watford. I was doing work in Williston. So, like, I used to drive to Beach and drive up to Williston because it was the only way you knew how much time it would take. Right, if you went up 85, you didn't know what kind of Highway 22 was we had the mudslide at one point in time. So I saw that part of it. Right, you move 35 to 50,000, essentially men under the age of 40 into any area, you're going to and pay them a lot of money. You're going to have more driving crimes. You're going to have some of that. So I did that. Then I started working for my dad in the middle of all of that. Then I ran for the legislature in 2012 when we were talking about surge funding, prairie dog funding, infrastructure funding. My old high school coach was the Senate Majority Leader, Rich Wardner. So I got the best mentorship you could possibly ask for as being a state senator. So I kind of I grew up in the oil business. I grew up politically in the oil boom, and I practiced a private business in western North Dakota as all of this stuff was going on. So we got to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of all of it.
Maybe responsibility might be too strong of word, but how do you balance, the industries of the oil field and agriculture, the two biggest industries in our state?
So I think, one, I used to do the oil or the title work, right? Like I would buy leases, I would run title in those courthouses. That was kind of how I did that stuff. And I never settled surface damage for a potential oil well that wasn't in a pasture or a stubble field. So there's always been a relationship between the ag and energy industry, and sometimes that conflict exists. In some of that, but I think the way you deal with it is you start with the basic premise of, you said earlier, I graduated from high school in Dickinson in 1995. Nobody stayed. If you didn't work for one of the four corner businesses in Dickinson, right? You had Fisher, you had Baker Boy, you had Steffes, and CHI, and you had those industries, but there were no opportunities here.
Right.
The cattle market sucked. There was no such thing as 90-day corn. There was no Bakken. Like, there were no opportunities that really existed out here. You know, the Richardson ethanol plant didn't exist. The biodiesel or the renewable diesel plant in South Hart didn't exist. So if you recognize those things and you recognize that our best natural resources aren't growing in the ground or coming out of the ground, they're in high schools. And when you can figure out a way to create opportunity that those kids have the ability to stay here if they want, whether it's in the ag industry or the energy industry or every other industry that is supported by those two cornerstones of our economy, then you should be excited about it.
Did you see yourself, or do you see yourself as a liaison between agriculture and oil?
Yes and no. I think, yeah, because they're the two biggest industries in North Dakota, right? Like, they just are. Oil is responsible for a significant part of our state budget, but every single community in North Dakota is an ag community, every one. And we've got to see some really cool things, right? We take soybeans from the Red River Valley, we crush them in Spiritwood, which is right next to Jamestown, and we create renewable diesel in Dickinson. So that's east, central, west. That is ag, that is energy, that is a part of that. And a big part of that for me in Congress was, these traditional fights that sometimes existed between eastern North Dakota and western North Dakota are from the ag industry and the energy industry, kind of go away when everybody talks about electrification and liquid fuels are all bad. And so I spent 4 years of my 6 years in Congress under the Biden administration that really just didn't like any of the things we did in North Dakota. So being an old defense attorney, a lot of times out there, I felt like I was North Dakota's defense attorney.
Okay, we touched on agriculture, we touched on oil exploration, but there is another player that's coming on strong in a big way. We're going to talk about tourism when we return with our visit with the 34th governor of the state of North Dakota, Kelly Armstrong, here on Western Edge Living, presented by CHI, St. Alexius Health, Dickinson. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll never miss an episode of Western Edge Living presented by CHI St. Alexius Health Dickinson as we continue our conversation with the governor of North Dakota, Kelly Armstrong. And, I was going to mention, you've always had this air of confidence about you. I can see why you're such a good politician. Do you consider that an asset, or is this who you are?
I'm better at it now than I was when I started. It's just like anything else. I started in courtrooms. My conflict resolution actually started as being the American Legion baseball coach in Dickinson. That was still one of the best jobs I've ever had in my life. But if you can deal with youth sports parents, you can deal with other politicians once in a while. And so I think like everything else, you get better. But I've learned. I got very good advice from my friend Ron Reichert, and he said, don't go into character, because every time you walk into a courtroom, then you're going to have to put yourself into character. So try and be yourself, try and be authentic, and that's what I hope people know they get with me, good, bad, or indifferent.
Where does tourism rank? We talked about oil, we talked about agriculture. Where does tourism rank? Where is it going?
Well, where it ranks is it's something important. We're proud of North Dakota. We have, one of the things you hear a lot is it's one of the last states people visit, but we have a tremendous opportunity with the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library. I always tell people I think the Badlands in North Dakota are one of the most beautifully unique places in the world. For as great as the Rockies are, you see them 80 miles in advance when you're driving into them. When you're driving tabletop, you can do it on the interstate, but it's better on Franks Creek Road. Mm-hmm. When you're just driving on this flat pasture land and all of a sudden you just drop right into this bright orange and pink and coal veins and it comes out of nowhere, I think it's just a real opportunity to really enhance tourism in North Dakota.
I live amongst those people, and not everybody is actually thrilled about this library coming. However, I'm telling them that we have to embrace it. We have to look at it as an opportunity. Can you expand on that?
So I started with this, and my dad will tell this story too. My dad's been involved with the TR Library and Dickinson State University and all of that, and so I went to one of these meetings with him. I got brought to it, and I'll never forget. It was at the Badlands Activity Center, and we walk out of the meeting. I'm not even the state senate yet, and he looks at me, and we get in the car and we start driving back, and that's when they were going to build the library in Dickinson. And I looked at him, I said, this only works if it's in Medora, right? And I got yelled at from the Badlands Activity Center all the way back to the Armstrong Corporation because he was such a DSU guy and such a Dickinson guy. And even now, him at this point is like, this is the right approach. There might be a nicer presidential library on the planet, but nobody has a more beautiful backyard. And you're right, it's coming and it's going to be a part of the landscape, and we should embrace it. I think they're doing things right. We should be proud of it. It's the birthplace of modern conservation in the United States. It's where Teddy Roosevelt came. It's where he It's where he thought up the national park. The national parks as we see them today. It's a huge part of American culture, and it happened right there at the Elkhorn Ranch in Medora.
Have you read Aristocrat of the West, the story of Harold Schaefer?
I have, yes, but not for a very long time.
Okay, I'll refresh your memory. There's a quote in there that he made in the early 90s. He said, someday people are going to be investing in Medora just as they are in the Black Hills of South Dakota when Mount Rushmore came about and everything that exploded there. We're there, aren't we?
Well, we're there, and I think we're unique in that we have access to, I always tell people, if you spend more than a weekend in North Dakota, we claim you, right? And that's where we're at with Teddy Roosevelt, who is one of the 5 most consequential figures in the entire history of the United States, and a big part of how he became president happened right there. And, you don't get that kind of draw with anybody other than Teddy Roosevelt, and we have the opportunity to really capitalize on it.
It's going to be they're billing it as a digital library for an analog president. There's things that we're going to learn about Theodore Roosevelt that we've never heard about before. Do you know anything? What else do you know about the 26th president of the U.S.?
Well, I know a lot about him in that, we stand there, like everybody talks about the man in the arena speech, right? It doesn't matter if you're a criminal defense attorney or a politician. I prefer his speech on July 4th that he gave in Dickinson, which was really his going back to New York City or going back into politics speech, where I like big things. I like big fields, big trees, and the speech that he gave in Dickinson, I think that's the part of him we're going to have to embrace, because this is going to be a world-class facility that there's never been anything like it. You're going to be able to have a conversation with Teddy Roosevelt, and we're going to utilize AI, and they're going to utilize technology, but they're also going to do it in a way that doesn't take away from its spot in Medora, its spot in the Badlands. Even the building and the architecture is designed so that you don't walk into this huge monstrosity that looks out of place in a place that is really about as rugged and wild as you can be.
Western Edge Living recently signed a marketing partnership with the TR Medora Foundation. We're working close with that group, and I think now retired Randy Hudsonville stressed that we have to find other things to do in Medora other than the musical and the pitchfork fondue, and we have to create an experience. And talking with their marketing department now, day tripper is a word that comes up a lot. When that is doubled, when the day tripper turns to two-day stays, what happens to the economic impact?
Well, it comes all the way to Dickinson, right? I mean, they're building a new hotel. They've got a cool hotel. I think one of the things, but 30 miles or 24 miles or whatever it is, when you don't have a ton of traffic, this is a drive that most people are easy to do. But I think there's cool things. We were already talking with the former governor in North Dakota, who's now the Secretary of Interior, and our Parks and Rec, and talking about like the Mattahay Trail. It's one of the premier mountain bike trails in the country,
yes, it is. Not
just in the state. And there is a huge market for those kind of things. And so how we can figure out to capitalize on the things we're good at. Like we don't need an amusement park in Medora. We don't need to make this. I mean, Coney Island's great. I've been there. But we don't need to make it that. We need to make it part of why people want to come here. And I think you're talking like day trips, like hiking. Bison are, fantastic. The wild horses, people love prairie dogs. There are a tremendous amount of things that we get to do in North Dakota and in Medora without changing the fabric of what it is and what a working cattle ranch is. Because that's the other part about, Teddy Roosevelt. This was never meant to be, it was meant to be a working ranch and working conservation, and that's important.
We only have a couple of minutes left, but I want to take advantage of that time for you to touch on data centers, AI, and where that's going.
So I think the answer with that is there's a group of people that think we're moving way too fast. There's a group of people that think we're not moving fast enough. I think North Dakota offers a lot of the resources you need. Being cold and windy is not usually a good selling point. Turns out it is for data centers. We have the power. We have a lot of that. I will say the way I approach this is very simple. The policy side from the state is you will not raise consumer utility rates. If you are going to bring that type of project in, you will make sure that that doesn't get passed on to the end-use residential consumer. And then secondly, you got to get the locals to buy in. If you don't start on the ground in a local community and saying, hey, this is what we want to do in your city, in your county, in your area, then once you get that buy-in, we're ready to help, whether it's the Commerce Department, whether it's as the closing part of it. But the ones that are successful, by the way, it's not just data centers. Any of those larger scale economic developments only work well if the locals are bought in on the front end.
Finally, we have an agreement with the North Dakota State Historical Society, Bill Peterson and his staff, to archive shows of historical significance in their vaults for prosperity. And this show will be one of them. So when somebody's looking at this 50 years from now and they see the 34th governor, what do you want them to know?
That North Dakota is happy to have you here when you're watching this. I hope that 50 years from now, more North Dakota high school kids are staying in North Dakota than leaving. We love talking about everything. I just got to go up to Dickinson High today before we came on this show. I had a bunch of kids that wrote us letters to the governor's office. Instead of answering with a form letter, we said, hey, we're going to go do Western Edge Living, so why don't we come into Dickinson High School, my own stopping grounds, and answer the questions in person. We can talk about all the great things in North Dakota, but the greatest thing we have is the next generation in North Dakotans.
I stand at Painted Canyon and I look and how much that appeals to me and how much it is so heartwarming to see that, knowing that we have leaders in this state that share that passion is very comforting. Kelly, thank you very, very much for what you're doing for the state of North Dakota, and thank you for being on Western Edge Living.
Thanks for having me. It's always great to be back in Mountain Time.
Western Edge Living, presented by CHI St. Alexius Health Dickinson. Thanks for watching.
Western Edge Living.